we've done part one and part two. I know things are changing fast, right, Marcus? So as we're talking about some of this stuff, like attach the disclaimers to you in terms of you just posted your final mock on the game day, right? So you got your head on a swivel when it comes to these mock drafts at this point.
Yeah, we've had some trades. We've had some free agent action over the last couple of weeks that have kind of moved these things around. Obviously, the big trade with Orlando Brown going to the Kansas City Chiefs. Maybe had to flip some stuff later on in this first round. But for the most part, I feel very good about it. I really like what we have here in this bottom end of the first round.
Go check out previous versions. I'm not going to go through them, all of them. I want to make you, the users, seek them out. Is that good content driving? I hope so. But part three, we're going to go 22 through 32. There is a Jets pick coming up, which I'm really excited to see and hear what you got. Well, let's just kick this thing off. Tennessee Titans, where are you going here?
Yeah, they completely whiffed on Isaiah Wilson last year in the first round, already out of the league. We know their offensive tackle situation is dicey. I like Samuel Cosmi from Texas quite a bit there. Not the most dominating run blocker, but he's a fantastic athlete with great feet. I think you slide him in at right tackle. He's a plug-and-play starter. Makes a ton of sense for a Titans offense that needs to rebuild this offseason.
You mentioned that swing and a miss. I mean, that is one of the bigger swings and misses in recent draft memory. No, I mean, I don't want to get down
snaps.
I mean,
4 snaps he played in the NFL.
That is rough. It's still a position, I'm assuming too, that, and I know you've got kind of a run of tackles happening here in this part of the draft, but it's still a position, obviously, that once they start to go with Derrick Henry as well, it makes too much sense, right? Not to go and support that player. Is there another position you think Tennessee could ultimately target if they don't go O-line?
Yeah, I think pass rusher. We know that they signed Bud Dupree. They have Harold Landry. Would not be surprised at all if they continue to invest in the defensive line. I think Christian Barmore is also an option here if they want to put somebody with Jeffrey Simmons. But yeah, look to the interior defensive line, the edge, and then offensive tackle.
All right. I had to ask a question with my Jets giddiness kicking in. Number 23, the Jets, courtesy of Seattle, for the Jamal Adams trade. By the way, Marcus, I'm just going to say it. I like this trade already for the Jets, given what we saw last year. Great pass rusher, et cetera, et cetera. But I actually really like what Joe Douglas did. This is a hugely important pick for the Jets. If I, don't say so myself. Where do you have them going here? Because I do think they can go in a variety of different directions with this pick.
Yeah, I think Jets fans would love to see them, draft an offensive lineman to help protect Zach Wilson. But as you just mentioned, we just had a run of offensive tackles come off the board. So the Jets go somewhere else. They go to their defensive backfield, which, Adam, they need corners. You know this. I like their safeties. I like Ashton Davis. I like Marcus May. They need a corner, and I go Greg Newsome from Northwestern. If you told me that Greg Newsome could stay healthy in his career, I might say he's the best corner in this draft. I mean, he is unbelievable. When you watch that Northwestern defense with him on the field versus him without, totally different. This is somebody that I think can play in any scheme. He's very twitchy. He can drive on the football, and he's going to create plays. Getting him at 23 would be an absolute steal, and I would love to see him in Robert Saleh's defense.
I love this pick. It's, if you gave me an opportunity, I hope he's still there, is probably the biggest concern. Watched a lot of Big Ten football this year right down the road. This dude was everywhere. If you watch Ohio State, you watch a couple of specific games. They need it. Look, I like the Bryce Hall pick last year, who tore up, of course, his leg and recovered, and it was okay for them, but they need corners. So, and of course I have to dive into this as a Jets fan. Edge rusher has been a popular pick here. Offensive line, maybe, but ultimately you think, they've beefed up that defensive line too, right? It would make sense, I guess, at this point in your eyes, to focus on that secondary bit because of the additions on the defensive line.
Yeah, I mean, if they wanted to go edge rusher and find somebody to pair with Carl Lawson, I think that would make a ton of sense as well. Azeez Ojulari, I absolutely love him. We'll get to him in a second. That would make a lot of sense. And again, I think offensive tackle, offensive guard, both make a lot of sense. If they could even make a small trade up to go get an Elijah Vera Tucker or a Christian Darrisaw, I think that makes a ton of sense. Just didn't happen in this mock, so they take the best cornerback available.
I would be very happy with this as a Jets fan. All right, number 24, Pittsburgh. Just talking a little bit and connecting them to a running back. Is that the direction you're going here with pick number 24?
Yeah, and actually, I have them taking Travis Etienne. Just depending on when you ask me, I could say either one of them fits. In this case, I think they need a little bit of speed in that backfield. It's been a very slow backfield since, really even before the Le'Veon Bell days. And they just haven't had a burner at that position. They want to create big plays on offense. I think Travis Etienne can do it all. He can catch out of the backfield. He can play in any offense. I love the fit here at number 24.
I love Etienne as a player, man. I mean, somehow still underrated, even though
Yes.
he's compiled one of the greatest running back careers in the history of college football. Just an absolute and you're right. I mean, that's an interesting fit there too, because this is sort of the modern day running back. I will say this is the Alvin Kamara style. This is the Christian McCaffrey style. If you're going to give him touches, Marcus, if you're using ETN, I'm assuming at least a third of those touches are going to come through the air. Just so good in so many places for Clemson. I can't wait. I love to see him end somewhere awesome, but I will say this is a little bit earlier than you look at some of the props, right? Than people are forecasting ETN going.
And the only reason I had him going here is because I think the Jaguars, again, we're going to talk about them next at 25. I think it would make a ton of sense to pair him with Trevor Lawrence, right? Put him back with his quarterback. So maybe Pittsburgh just feels like, hey, it's too hard to find guys with speed at the position. Let's just grab him and move on.
Let's go to the Jags. Number 25, via the Rams, Trevor Lawrence, potential running back. Urban's team, which is still weird, by the way, to say. I haven't quite acclimated myself to him being at the NFL level. What do you have the Jags doing here?
I think the best safety in this class is Trevin Merrig from TCU. I think he can play in the slot. I think he can play as a single high safety. I think you can have him play in the box. He can just do it all. He shouldn't be available at this spot. He's just the best player available. The Jaguars add some more speed to the defense, some more versatility. This would be a home run pick for Jackson.
Awesome player. This is the kind of guy that gets lost in the quarterback frenzy draft process, in my opinion. We focus so much time on the wide receivers, the position players. I loved watching him for TCU. I think it'd be a great fit. Let's move to Cleveland. Interesting team now, obviously investing in some of that pass rush. They've picked up Baker Mayfield's deal. A lot of good vibes when it comes to Cleveland. You and I are both team Baker, I guess. So at number 26, what do you have them doing?
Yeah, we know they signed Jadeveon Clowney to a one-year deal. They also brought in Takk McKinley, but I think the Browns would like to find a long-term, complementary player to Myles Garrett. And Azeez Ojulari is phenomenal. He is 6'2", 249 pounds. He's the first ever freshman captain at Georgia under Kirby Smart. Just an incredible person and leader. He also led the SEC in sacks, tackles for a loss, and forced fumbles as a 20-year-old on 400 snaps last year. I mean, he is an ascending talent. I think you put him behind Clowney for a year, let him get stronger, let him learn the position, and then in 2022, he's your starting outside linebacker.
This is like just an enormous talent watching this guy. I love like physically, if you were to build someone for the position, he probably has to get a little bit bigger, which I kind of like the idea of a quote unquote redshirt deal year, but he would still play. I think it would be a great fit. Another guy who I think Marcus's range could probably go, he could go earlier, he could go later. I mean, where do you think the ceiling for him is as a player when it comes to this draft? Does he have a spot potentially in the teens? Jets, of course, have been kind of linked to him throughout the process. How much higher do you think he could go if a team really likes him?
So at the Game Day NFL, I just published my top 150 players in this class, and Azeez Ojulari is actually at number 8.
Wow.
I just think he's phenomenal. So anywhere after the first 12 or 13 picks, I think make a ton of sense. Maybe we see him go to Minnesota, the Raiders sitting at 17. Maybe we'll see, the Colts who might be losing Justin Houston. I think anywhere inside the top, 25 picks, he makes a ton of sense.
All right. We move now to the Baltimore Ravens, a team, of course, Lamar Jackson turned it on last year. They've got some interesting weapons in place. Probably I want to add some more at some point, involved in a pretty big trade here. So where do you have them going?
Yeah, Baltimore can go in a bunch of different directions, right? They need probably an offensive tackle to replace Orlando Brown. They need receivers. But we kind of know how Baltimore drafts, right? They don't panic. They just sit there and they take the best available player. And to me, that's Caleb Farley. If it wasn't for the back injury, I think there's a very good chance he's the first defender drafted. I think he potentially goes inside the top 10. The Ravens draft him here. Maybe they sit him for half the year. Maybe they redshirt him the entire year. But that's somebody, if you pair him with Marlon Humphrey and Marcus Peters, that would be quite the cornerback trio there in Baltimore.
If he's healthy, he's dynamite. It's a shame that, of course, and back is obviously a difficult one to deal with, and it's a difficult injury to invest in as well. So you understand maybe the hesitancy for GMs, but if he's right, that's going to be just unbelievable value here late in this round. And again, awesome defensive players all over the board, given the focus on offense early on in this draft. Let's go to New Orleans. They've got, again, a lot of pieces. Of course, we wonder what they're going to do with quarterback. You know, I have talked about that a lot. We'll continue to talk about it a lot. What do you have them doing at 28?
Yeah, I have the Saints taking one of my favorite players in the draft, Xavier Collins, a 6'5", 270-pound off-the-ball linebacker. Just a monster. He was, if you didn't get a chance to watch him last year at Tulsa, just absolutely dominant. You can drop him in coverage, and he's so natural. He can, rush the passer. He can defend the run. I think in the Saints kind of hybrid defense, he could potentially take over, that Trey Hendrickson role that we saw last year. Maybe they leave him as a 4-3 middle linebacker. They can do so many different things. I think they would love to have him there.
Delivered my worst gambling loss of the football season in overtime with that pick six.
It's Tulane.
Oh my God. I mean, that was, I still have not emotionally recovered from that. That was one of, love him as a player. Did not love him in that moment. And he was, by the way, streaking down the field. Like you saw 270 pounds moving, what it looks like when an athlete like that puts it all together. But still, he owes me that money. All right. Green Bay. You mentioned Jordan Love last year. Aaron Rodgers was Superman again, maybe the best version of him we've ever seen, which is saying a lot. So this is going to be like kind of I don't know, not controversial, but I think this is one the whole league kind of has their eyes on, given how little they've invested on offense early on in the draft. What do you have them doing here?
Yeah, it's time to get Aaron Rodgers some help. And it's Elijah Moore, who I think is the best slot receiver in this class. He's only 5'9", 185 pounds, but he's a fantastic athlete. He actually led the SEC in receiving yards per game. Not Devontae Smith. It was Elijah Moore at 147 yards per game. Absolutely dynamic. I think he's a better version of Randall Cobb that we saw just thrive in Green Bay. You can put him in the backfield. You can line him up out wide. You can put him in a slot. He's going to be productive, a perfect complement to Devontae
So
Adams.
This is where the whole wide receiver evaluations get interesting, right? So there's probably 3 or 4 wideouts that could theoretically get the call here if Green Bay decides to go that route, no?
Yeah, and I mean, everybody that I've talked to around the league all thinks that Elijah Moore is the 4th receiver at worst in this class, and some even have him higher. So would not shock me at all, Adam, if he goes even higher than this in the NFL draft.
That would be fascinating. But again, for someone that watched a lot of college football, not necessarily a shock. I just think we've inserted this hierarchy at wide receivers, and he's kind of had his spot. But in terms of impact, the guy was unbelievable last year to watch. Lane Kiffin was very, very good to him. All right, we move to Buffalo. Man, another team I think that could go in a variety of different spots, a team on the rise. What do you have them doing?
Yeah, Buffalo really doesn't have any holes on their roster, so they can be aggressive here. They can take somebody with upside. I'm not the biggest Gregory Rousseau fan from Miami, but he was invited to the draft the first night of the draft, and that typically means, Adam, you're going to be a first-round pick, right? So I think here to Buffalo at 30, you put him with Sean McDermott, who is one of the best defensive minds in football, one of the best teachers and player developers. You put him in that scheme. You kind of let him learn for a year or two, and maybe he becomes, a superstar pass rusher. I can certainly see it. He's got all the potential. He just needs a lot of work.
It's I've know on Twitter you have talked a lot about these Miami guys, and specifically with him and how he fits. So it'll be interesting to see what the other evaluations on him are. All right, let's round these thing off. We got 2 more to go. Baltimore at number 31. Again, trade things are happening. This is hot off the presses. Marcus, where do you have him going?
Yeah, I've got him taking Rashad Bateman. If he would have just stayed with his initial opt-out of the 2020 season, probably a top 15, top 20 pick, dealt with some COVID issues during the season, didn't quite look the same, but he's a perfect fit for the Baltimore offense. He can win on the outside with route running. He's quick enough to play in the slot. A perfect big body target for Lamar Jackson.
I love the talent. You're right. Like, it was just disjointed. Minnesota got hit hard with the COVID stuff, played, opted out, opted in, opted out. Just never quite the same. Offense wasn't as good. Minnesota wasn't as good through no fault of his. Another guy in a really deep wide receiver class that's going to find a home and probably excel in it. All right. So last one, number 32, our Super Bowl champs, Tampa Bay. And you talk about like being able to draft to fit. I mean, they've got, this is a loaded team, Marcus. So I guess where do you have them going?
Yeah, when you are absolutely loaded and you're bringing back all 22 starters, you can afford to be aggressive. And that's what I have them doing. They're taking Jalen Phillips, the defensive end from Miami. Look at him. If he was 100% healthy and didn't have the concussion issues, I think he's a top 5 or 6 pick in this class. I've compared him to Nick Bosa and Joey Bosa. And in fact, he's more productive and far more athletic. This was the number 1 defensive recruit coming out of his class. 3 or 4 concussions. We know that he had to medically retire. I think at this point in the draft is where you feel comfortable drafting him, and you put him on that defensive line with Shaq Barrett and Jason Pierre-Paul.
Unfair. No, I mean, this guy is, I mean, you watch too. He is that guy. If you like physically, emotionally, actually, he has to keep it in check a little bit because he would get so spirited in games last year. But just a terrifying presence on that defensive line. This is one of those picks, Marcus, that if it goes this way, like you talk about Tampa just beefing up. I mean, what a
rich get richer. Yeah, that's exactly what it would be.
What a luxury. I would actually love to see that happen. Or if we could wait a couple picks, go to the Jets, that would be fine as well.